At the very beginning of the story, Driss had just gotten out of prison. He had no degree, no real job, and grew up on the streets. The kind of troublemaker Philippe, the man in the wheelchair, became interested in him. Philippe looked at Driss and asked if he really had no ambition in life, other than just getting by. Driss's answer made Philippe burst out. A friend. That feeling was something Philippe hadn't felt in years. So he asked Driss to come back the next day, and said he would give him an answer then. But after leaving the mansion, Driss didn't feel relieved at all. It wasn't until late at night that his mother came home from work. Driss pulled out a small decorative egg, and said it was a gift for her. In truth, he had taken it from. She kicked him out of the house. With nowhere to go, Driss could only share leftover food with his friends on the street. They talked all night until sunrise. When the crowd finally dispersed, only 2 homeless men were left. At dawn, Driss got up and headed back to Philippe's place. All he wanted was the document. Therapist was extremely thorough, explaining every step of the care routine, how to lift him, how to secure him, how to avoid further injury. But Driss barely listened. He lifted Philippe from the bed to the wheelchair, and forgot to buckle the safety belt. The wheelchair shook, and almost tipped over. When washing Philippe's hair, he had put the shampoo on Philippe's foot. To improve blood circulation, Philippe had to wear compression stockings every day. Driss took one look at the material, and immediately refused. But the worst part was still coming. Because Philippe was completely paralyzed, he couldn't use the bathroom on his own. That task had to be handled by the caregiver. Driss protested on the spot, but the therapist told him this was part of the job. The protest eyes were glued to his phone to check whether Philippe could feel anything in his legs. Driss actually poured hot water directly on them. While feeding him, he stared at the assistant the whole time. When handing over the phone, he often forgot that Philippe couldn't move his hands. But at certain moments, Driss truly didn't treat Philippe as disabled. For example, when going out, he refused to load Philippe into the trunk like cargo. Instead, he put him in the passenger seat. He let Philippe feel the engine of a sports car, like a normal person. When dealing with neighbors, who constantly took over parking spots, Driss handled it in the most direct way possible. Those were his rare, reliable moments. One time during an outing, Philippe stopped in front of a painting, and zeros. Driss couldn't understand it at all. To him, it looked like random paint on a blank canvas. In his one of Philippe's friends came by personally. He warned Philippe to be careful of this suspicious caregiver. He had checked Driss's record. While he wasn't a major criminal, he had plenty of prior offenses. But Philippe didn't care. To him, the greatest respect for a disabled person was not pity. Over the years, he had changed caregivers countless times. Only Driss had truly treated him like a normal man. As for Driss's past, Philippe didn't hold it against him, and facts soon proved Driss wasn't as bad as people thought. When it mattered and stable, Driss immediately grabbed a warm towel, placed it on Philippe's head, and told him to breathe slowly. It was the first time Driss handled an emergency on his own. Under his calm reassurance, Philippe gradually settled down. Just to be safe, Driss slept beside the room. At 4 in the morning, Philippe had trouble breathing again. This time, Driss moved with confidence. He lifted him into the wheelchair, buckled the belt, and pushed him to the riverside. The night breeze was cool, Philippe explained. It was a side effect of the medication. Even without physical sensation, the pain was still real. Driss believed there had to be another way to make him feel better. They later sat down at a nearby restaurant. Philippe talked about his past. When he was young, he met the love of his life at school. After married, later, a paragliding accident took his wife's life and left him permanently paralyzed. Only his head could still move. After hearing this, Driss admitted he wasn't sure he could survive that himself. That night, they talked for hours. There was no distance between employer and caregiver, only 2 friends talking. And that day happened to be the last day of the trial period. Philippe told Driss he was officially hired. Only then did Driss realize that the egg he had taken was incredibly meaningful. It was a gift from Philippe's partner before she passed away. 1 egg each year, 25 in total, symbolizing the years they had shared. Realizing the seriousness of it, Driss immediately took action. He contacted his sister to help search for it, and even went to the police station to bring his troubled younger brother home. But the brother stayed stubborn and climbed right back into a gang car. Meanwhile, Philippe had a female pen pal he had only communicated with through letters. They had written to each other for 6 months. The relationship was ambiguous, but they had never met. Driss thought the whole thing was unreliable, so he found her phone number in the letters, and sped things up for both of them. At first, Philippe resisted strongly, but when the phone reached his ear, he answered it anyway. Driss and the butler politely stepped out and gave him space. That phone call quietly changed everything. As calls became more frequent, the relationship quickly grew closer. They began exchanging photos. The version still able-bodied, and even told him to throw away the wheelchair photo. Just then, Driss barged in. The butler panicked and slipped the photo into a folder. Driss had come because Philippe's daughter had snuck into the room for cigarettes. While drawing, she was rude and sharp-tongued. Driss got annoyed immediately and went straight to Philippe to complain. Philippe said he would discipline his daughter. Days passed, Driss became more and more professional as a caregiver. Daily routines were second nature now. Life was filled with lighter moments, morning water splashes, paint thrown freely on canvas. Philippe was still the one being teased. Driss started painting too. He believed his work was just as good as anything in a gallery. The colors were bolder and should have fetched a good price. But when it was finished, no one wanted to comment. To let Philippe truly feel the wind, Driss installed a motor on the wheelchair. The speed shot up to 12 kilometers per hour. With spring wind in their faces, they laughed the whole way. To give Philippe more physical sensation, Driss even hired a massage therapist to come over. At the same time, Philippe's daughter was suddenly dumped by her boyfriend. She asked Driss for help, and even offered to pay him. Driss didn't want to get involved at first, but in the end, he agreed. He stopped the boy at the school gate, made him apologize, and demanded daily croissants. The boy didn't dare argue. Soon, Philippe's birthday arrived. As usual, he hired a full orchestra, playing nothing but classical music. Driss nearly fell asleep. When the performance ended, he switched to his own playlist, and started dancing on the spot. The atmosphere exploded. Everyone joined in. If classical music made people turn non-stop, but after the excitement faded, Philippe grew anxious, because the photo he had sent was of the confident man he used to be, not who he was now. On the day of the meeting, he tried on many outfits, but chose the simplest one. They agreed on 6 in the evening. Philippe arrived 2 hours early. During that time, Driss drove to his mother's workplace. For years, she had carried the whole family alone, and he, at the age when he should have taken responsibility, had chosen to run away. Even after getting out of prison and starting over, the guilt never left him. Waiting slowly destroyed overpowered anticipation. In the end, he didn't show up. Driss sensed something was wrong, and pushed Philippe straight onto a private jet, as if starting a spontaneous trip. On the plane, Driss opened an envelope. Inside was 11,000 euros. It turned out, Philippe had shown Driss's painting to a friend, and claimed it was by a mysterious artist, who might exhibit in London and Berlin. The friend bought the painting on the spot. The plane cut through the night, and greeted the first light of morning. They drove toward the mountains, and arrived in the Alps. It was a famous skydiving destination. Compared to Philippe's calm, Driss was far more nervous. But the moment he jumped, he understood what freedom meant. They floated through the sky, as if returning to a carefree youth. When the trip ended, they were still smiling, but reality soon caught up. Driss's brother had gotten into trouble again. He claimed he could handle it, but still came asking for help. Driss asked his sister to keep it secret, so their mother wouldn't worry. Philippe heard everything. He realized Driss needed to return to his own life. Their time together had reached its end. The next day, Driss packed his bags and left. The usually cold assistant came to see him off, and even introduced him to new people. At the door, new applicants were already lining up. Driss returned the pager, and said goodbye to the butler. Before leaving, the butler asked him to take care of a folder. After he left, Driss discovered an unsent photo of Philippe in the wheelchair inside. He finally understood why Philippe hadn't shown up that day. Under the night sky of Paris, Driss and his brother waited for their mother to get off work. He returned to the familiar neighborhood. When the gang appeared again, he warned them to stay away. Then he interviewed for a job close to home. His humor impressed the boss. When talking about the painting on the wall, he spoke confidently. That change came from his time as a caregiver. In the end, he landed a job as a delivery driver. Meanwhile, Philippe kept changing caregivers one after another, but never found someone who truly understood him. His smile slowly faded, until one weekend, the butler contacted Driss again. On the night of their reunion, the familiar smiles returned. Driss drove Philippe through the streets of Paris at full speed. Police cars chased closely behind. They pretended it was a medical emergency, and escaped successfully. But Driss knew the thrill was only temporary. They then headed north, to the coast of Dunkirk. The sea breeze was gentle. Philippe thought it was just a casual outing. Only when they walked into the restaurant did he realize Driss wouldn't be staying. He returned the Faberge egg. It turned out Driss had already mailed the wheelchair photo, and arranged the meeting with the pen pal. When Philippe turned around, and saw that familiar figure, every emotion surged at once. What Driss did wasn't just companionship. He helped Philippe walk back into life. On the northern coast of France, the wind was soft, and the story ended there.